Mm-hmm.
So now, switching into directions of the team. Obviously, I think starting back with you guys, Zion Williamson. There were rumors, there were news coming out when y'all made the firing of David Griffin and y'all hired Joe Dumars, that Zion could be traded. I think Zion is a player who, when healthy, y'all see what he brings to the table.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, he's also been inconsistently healthy. He has missed games. And so people always are going to start wondering, are y'all just going to get to a point where it's like we may need to just restart? There was what was the rumor that there's a mandate that y'all need to trade Zion, and then yesterday I think he came out and said no, that's not the case. So, and obviously hearing that, Hawks fans are like, well, hold on, because I think the start of the trade, if that happened, they were like, okay, well, I mean, could get you guys Jalen Johnson, and that's the start of it, and we kind of figure it out. Do you guys, from what y'all seen, do you think the Pelicans should entertain trading Zion at all? Do you think that needs to be a discussion, or are you like, let's keep going with it and let's see what happens?
You go ahead and start, Rav.
I can start with that one. So first off, because I'm always pro business, the answer should always be yes. You should always entertain offers. You should always see what the value of your players, your franchise, whatever it may be, is. Now, I'm going to go back to your initial statement. Everyone talks about, hey, Zion's unavailable, he's untrustworthy. But what was your reaction when you heard Zion might be open for trade? You're like, what could I package to go get him? And something tells me that a lot of fan bases feel the exact same way. So if everybody wants this guy, even though he hasn't been, available up until this point, why would the Pelicans be in a rush to give him for a bad trade? The other part of it is like, listen, the Pelicans were out of this thing by November, December, for a long time, right? We were like, hey, maybe. And then after a point, it was like, okay, this not happened. And so he took his time to get healthy. And I don't think there's a game in the second part of the season that Zion couldn't have played in. I just think the Pelicans were like, well, Cooper Flag is at the top of that list, and we're not coming back anytime soon. Zion, this back-to-back, go ahead and sit this one out. The last time we saw Zion, he single-handedly went to Minnesota, beat Minnesota, fell on his back, scored 30-something points in 28 minutes, and then all of a sudden didn't play for the rest of the season for 20 more games. So he could have played a lot more games. But to answer your question, I'm always going to listen to offers just to see if someone blows me away. But what he showed the back half of the season is different than anything he's put on the court so far in his career, because he's shown the ability to sustain the energy levels and the conditioning on both sides of the court and be a focal point of not just someone who scores a whole lot of points, but someone who impacts the game in so many different ways. And you built your team around it. And you listen to some of the things he said, the latter part of the season, they knew they were looking toward the next year in the draft. And they knew, hey, Trey, especially after Brandon Ingram was traded, hey, Trey Murphy, Zion, this is your turn to take over the team and be the leaders of the team. It sounds like there was a lot of cohesion in terms of what the team was thinking and what Zion was thinking simultaneously. And look, unless you get a mother load offer, and let's say you even get Cooper Flag, Zion's not on a contract where it's like, man, that's $60 million only playing 40 games. He's not even making $40 million. And if you look at some of the players in the league making $40 million, give me Zion over everybody on that list, even if he plays only 50% of the games, right? And so I would rather see, hey, if you could get Cooper Flag, what does he look like next to Zion, right? And next to some of these pieces that you gathered. And so in my personal case, I'm giving it this year to see if it can come to fruition with all the other tools you put around it, and hope you have a healthier bill of health than you did last season. And then at this season, after end of the season, you're going to know one way or the other the direction of the franchise. But Gary, you might have a different opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a different opinion. I would say I definitely agree with you that you should always listen and gauge the value of your asset. I also think that we're on the Hawks podcast that Trae Young and Zion have a lot in common, where they're polarizing, and some people in the fan base are like, why would you trade a guy that's averaging 20 and 10 in Trae Young's case? And then some people are like, can he get out of here so we can let Ricochet and Dyson and Jalen Johnson and whatever haul you get for trade? So like, there's a lot of like polarity for those guys. And Zion's the same way. The fan base, there's parts of the fan base that love him. There's parts of the fan base that's like, man, this guy is never healthy. My stance on this is I don't think you should entertain trading him. And here's why. The first reason is that you spent a lot of time dealing with Zion with stuff off the court, dealing with Zion with stuff on the court. And the second that he's starting to like, okay, I'm growing up, I'm figuring things out. Obviously he had his run in off the court this season, but again, that didn't really have a lot to do with him. It's just the people who were involved. But he's starting to figure stuff out. And I don't know if I want to be the GM or the team that gave up on Zion a season too early, where then another team is benefiting from all the work you've put in, right? And I just don't know if that's something that is prudent and smart. Then you got this new guy, this new draft pick coming in, right? And let's say you it's Cooper Flag, or let's say it's Ace Bailey, or Dylan Harper, or VJ Edge, any of those guys. It is very difficult to have that guy step in and say, okay, you have to save the franchise. You are now the star. You are now the Zion, because Zion just left up out of here. And so when you look in guys' faces like Trey Murphy, and you look in guys' faces like Herb Jones, and you look in guys' faces like DeJounte, and you look in guys like a lot of those guys who you brought in to say, okay, we have I call the Pelicans unique in a bunch of different ways. And this is another case where we have this unique roster of young players and also guys who are ready to compete right now, like Zion, like DeJounte, like CJ McCollum, right? Guys who are here to compete. The best case, the only way for this team to get to where they're going is going to be through Zion being the version of Zion you saw at the second part of this season after he came back from the injury. And so trading him and then potentially building around another teenager and then restarting a timeline where now Trey and Herb are ahead of the timeline. It just seems very, very messy, especially when you just signed these guys and locked them down. I think you owe it to yourself, especially with this rookie coming in and whoever it might be. They're going to be on a small contract. Zion, my brother mentioned, is not on a big contract. Herb is on a really good contract. Trey is on a really good contract when you look across the league at some of their counterparts. You owe it to yourself to see if this can work once before you go ahead and blow it up. And I think having Zion also allows this rookie, again, whoever it is, to come in and focus on the things that can make them expedite their work, their growth, and their fit into the league easier, as opposed to like if you throw them in there and it's like, okay, look, you have to come in and save the franchise, and if you don't, we're back in the lottery again. That's just very difficult to do for a young player. So I would, in my personal opinion, I think this is the season. This is not the season to do it. Well, this is not the off season to do it. Again, if this thing goes left and he could, some of the things that you saw, not so much the injuries, but because the injuries are just like things that even he's gotten into a lot better shape and he's still dealing with some things in here and there. I think if he starts doing some of the things that you hear about off the court, like missing flight and showing missing practices and missing flights, and showing kind of like signals that like there's maybe some unrest here. Because again, by all accounts, Zion has always spoken about New Orleans as home and the crib and wanting to defend here, wanting to win in New Orleans. Again, people say stuff, look at people's actions versus their words, but he's always spoken that way. And so I would not do it this offseason. I think you owe it to him, you owe it to your team, you owe it to the fan base to see if you could finally put this thing together and see what can go. And one thing, so as I close this out, Joe Dumars is not gonna, I don't think he's the guy that's gonna sit around and wait, 2-3 years if this is not gonna work. I think he is of the mindset that like we're gonna give this a year or however long if this works. And then he'll make that decision. But I think this is one, like you mentioned earlier, where you come in, you see what you have, and you let this thing play out and then go. You're in no rush to trade Zion.
Yeah, this isn't a Luka situation where the whole front office is in agreement and everyone thinks one way. Like, it's actually been the opposite. Like, everyone's talked about how Zion is locked in this season. He's been more on time. He's been more of a leader. He's been working extra. He's better conditioned. Like, all the signs on the opposite side of the way. So I don't see a trade happening this summer. I know ESPN wants one to happen so bad. I don't see it, but you never know in the NBA.
Let me ask you this, Bryce. Would you trade for Zion if you were the Hawks GM, and let's say Joe Dumars came to you and said, "Listen, we want the house. We want Jalen. We want Ricochet. We want picks. We want out." Would you do it to pair him and Trey up?
I have been a person who, as much as I know how good Zion is, I have been hesitant to be willing to gut the team and resources for Zion. And one of the reasons why is just because, like I've said, it has been shown that he has not stayed healthy yet. And I just feel like for us, especially in today's NBA, with the CBA, how that's changed the way people construct teams, it is risky to do that without. It's almost like, obviously, here's the thing. You could trade for a player who's been healthy all the time, and then he gets hurt when he gets to you. So there's no
DeJounte Murray.
Exactly. There's no promises. There's no way you can just know for sure. But you do have a track record. Obviously, I understand if Zion is healthy and with Trae Young, that will be a dynamic duo. Everybody in Hawks still talk about the NBA draft lottery when he was tapping the Hawks logo, and everybody's like secretly he wants to be in Atlanta, but he hasn't said it, and everything like that. And I know what he could. Like, I think personally, obviously, if you're able to get some pieces around him, obviously that would be with the team. If you get to make the move, I think the Hawks obviously would have an elevated ceiling. I do have hesitations because what if you trade everything and then he keeps getting hurt? And now your franchise is essentially ruined in a way. You know, it's different when you draft him in your situation because it's not all you did was draft him. Yeah, that's all you did. So, like, you can afford to allow it to play out. It's
all of the assets, you still have all your assets.
Exactly. It's a little different when you're actually now having to give assets up for a player because now there's risk involved. Like, there's a chance this might flame out and then everybody getting fired. You know, but at the same time, some people may look at it and say, hey, they swung for the fences. They tried to do what they could, you know. Obviously, and also one reason why is because of the Hawks' assets from a draft perspective. We just got 2 first-round picks back because of the trade. We got a pick. I think we got the Lakers pick from you guys. And then I think we had the Kings pick convey from like the Kevin Huerter trade a couple of years ago. And I think the next few years we have like 7 first-round picks and 6 seconds. And like, it's one of those things where the Spurs still control our draft picks as well. So it's just to give up more of those assets. Like it's just tough because especially if with the new CBA, I would assume, I don't know, because you can still have 2 stars on this model on max contracts. You just probably should just keep it at that for the most part. Get into those aprons. That restricts what you can add. And the last thing you want is being a Phoenix situation, and you may have to give KD up for nothing because you can't take back as much because the CBA is saying you can't. And so it's something where if they did it, I'll have my, concerns, but at the same time, I also understand, okay, if he's healthy, let's go. Let's run it. But I'm not like 100% like, oh man, I would give up anything to give up Zion. But I also understand the talent. And like I said, there's some definitely people who listen to that and disagree with me. And that's just me. I'm more on the side of being careful in that situation because I know Zion's history, because like I said, also I know people have talked about, New Orleans could be a very distracting city. Maybe that provide distractions to Zion.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Atlanta, I don't think it's
I was about to say Atlanta ain't that better.
Atlanta ain't that better, so I don't know how he's going to respond to being in the city. I don't know if I want my star forward at Magic City. If he's for wings,
I'm about to say. I don't think you want Zion to eat wings. You don't want TMZ finding out that Zion stopping at them for wing. No, you don't want that.
Exactly, man. So like that. Like I said, so it's one of those things where I'll side more on the side of caution. But if they make the move, I get it. I feel like this is funny you mentioned that because I was like, well, if you're the Pelicans, it's like, all right, so y'all get Jalen back, so you get because how old is Zion right now?
24. It'll be 25
so
in July.
Jalen like the same age, so you're probably getting about the same age. Some people are still trying to figure out what Jalen Johnson's ceiling is. Because some people think he could be like a LeBron-esque type of player. Some people have said Scottie Pippen. I've heard like those types of names brought up with Jalen just because super athletic
really
guy,
good. He's
fast-break
really
dunker.
good.
He's a mismatch for a lot of teams because of that. People forget he also was one of the best rebounders. He had 10 plus rebounds. He averaged 10 rebounds a game. He was like 20, 10, and 5. Like, so there's like, there's a lot there where it's like, like, oh, Jalen, man, he might become like a guy. Like some Hawks fans having discussions. Could Jalen eventually become the number one guy on the team and things like that? And then like if you got Rishi-Shea, it's funny I say y'all get Rishi-Shea. It's like it just continues to add to all these forwards you have. Now I'm worried, where's Rishi-Shea going to fit in if he goes to New Orleans? Like where is he going to play? Y'all not going to put him in front of. Y'all going to probably put him on the bench. And so it's just like no one overall draft pick on the bench, in the second year. So it's one of those things where it's interesting to talk about just because you never know. You never know realistically how it's going to work out. But if they did it, I wouldn't sit here and be like, "Oh, I'm mad." I'm just like, all right, well, you gotta stay healthy, and if he stays healthy, I think him and Trey can do some great things together. So
yeah.
I mean, it's definitely one of those things where like the hypotheticals could go either way, realistically. I do want to ask you guys. Obviously, you guys did get the new GM, Joe, and then y'all got Troy Weaver. Did you guys think that was needed? Like, were y'all like, we needed to fire David Griffin, or was it kind of like, I mean, I guess this is what we're doing. Let's see what happens. Like, what was y'all reaction when y'all let go of David Griffin?
I guess I can start. I mean, after you have the second worst record in franchise history, something's going to change, right? There's going to be some type of effort. So whether it was head coach, whether it was GM, whether it was star player, something was going to change from that standpoint. I don't necessarily say, hey, David Griffin is the one that, we needed to make a change and the Pelicans organization needed to go in a different direction, right? Because if you look at his track record as the Pelicans president of basketball operations, he brought in and attained a lot of the players that we just talked about in Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, and not in your traditional way. Like the highest draft pick you got obviously was Zion, and everybody was going to pick Zion number 1. But after that, like Dyson is number 9, Jackson Hayes is number 8. Like you weren't picking in the top 10 year after year, and you were still able to find the Herb Jones, the Jose Alvarados, the Najee Marshalls, and all the things like that. And so from a talent acquisition standpoint, I think that there was a lot of good that David Griffin's regime left. But in terms of, someone taking the chopping block or someone taking the axe for the season, I think this is the least disruptive. Because in this way, if you're going to keep the head coach and give him another shot with a healthy roster, if you're going to keep the star player with healthy roster, they brought in someone who was very familiar with the organization. Obviously, a lot of history. He's from Louisiana. He's in the Hall of Fame for Louisiana athletes and basketball, things like that. There's less disruption that way. And for a team that's looking to compete next year and not rebuild and start all over, I think that, if someone was going to be the victim here or someone was going to be the person on the way out, it was the best option.
Yeah, I didn't look at this season and say, what went wrong? David Griffin went wrong. I didn't look at this season. And again, he another polarizing, person with the Pelicans. A lot of people did not like him and wanted him gone. A lot of people were like, well, he did some good things. And there was some asset mismanagement. Of course, everybody talks about the Lonzo trade, having to trade out first to get rid of Devontae Graham, things like that. Like you asset mismanagement that you can come up and say, okay, those were misses by David Griffin. However, he did have a lot of positive things. Again, it's not so much even the draft picks. A lot of those guys got contracts under David Griffin, and those contracts are like really good. Zion's contract is really good compared to think of guys like other superstars who are getting $60 million, in the second, when you talk about the tax apron and things. When you think about Herb Jones' contract versus a guy like Jaden McDaniels, right? Herb Jones is getting $60 million. Jaden McDaniels is getting $110 million. When you think about Trey Murphy's contract, getting 100, what is it? I think it's 110 versus like Michael Porter Jr., which I think Trey Murphy is better than Michael Porter Jr., but he's making $150 million. Then you think about guys like Josh Hart, who is on a really good friendly contract that's allowed the Knicks to go crazy with their spending. Just a lot of those contracts that David Griffin kind of worked out and got those guys under contract. Again, nobody has the answers to turn the injury sliders down. I don't think David Griffin has the answers to that, and I don't think Joe Dumars really has the answers to keep people on the court. We're going to see what Joe Dumars brings in that makes things a little different. He approaches people different. He approaches relationships different. So we'll see if he can connect with Zion in a different way that makes him maybe stay around in the city. He was already doing that a little bit, but maybe this gets him to be around the organization even more during his off time and during more in his summers, which can maybe lead to him staying on the floor a little bit longer. So we'll see if that happens. But again, David Griffin was just the guy that had to be, they had to be ahead on the chopping block. Shout out to Ned Stark, and he just happened to be Ned Stark. So.
No, I get that for sure. I mean, and, I feel like David Griffin's always, even when he was in Cleveland, I feel like he was a little, with LeBron and all that, and kind of all the things that surrounded that. But I mean, like you mentioned, I mean, he's made some good personnel decisions. I mean, he's drafted some good talent to the team, and so I think, but at the end of the day, results is what ownership and people look at, and so.
Yep.
Yes, we know injuries impacted the season, but at the same time, it's like I feel like there has to be someone that's fired, because if you run it back and something doesn't change, and it's like, well, should we have done something differently? So I think that obviously is always a big question, and I think too, like I said, it's funny because we're in two different parallels in terms of our franchise direction. You guys are more of, we expect to be good if we're healthy, but we just haven't seen it with the new pieces yet. Where with the Hawks, it's we have this young core that we've brought together, and we want to continue to improve on. And now it's just about making the right decisions to build around them going into the future, which is why I'm assuming they let go of Landry Fields, which did surprise me. I know it surprised a lot of people.
I was about to say, where did that come from? I had no idea that he was even on the hot seat.
Well, from what I was hearing, I listened to Jake Fisher, and then there's also a guy in the Hawks community named Brad Rowland, who's also kind of connected to the Hawks. They said they heard something, but they never thought it was like, oh, there's going to be an act. It's almost like, how some people, you have all these execs meet at these places or whatever events go on, and then that's where rumors come from. Nobody actually thought he was going to be fired. I think people saw, okay, you just acquired Ricochet, you have a Kongu who's stepping up, you got Dyson Daniels, you were able to, get some picks back for this year, you got, it seems like the team's better built around Trey and everything. And, next year, obviously, I've said it, next year is a playoff year. We have to be, to me, top six. Like we have to. And obviously, everybody also knows if Jalen Johnson didn't go down, we probably would have been top six. To me, I think we would have been top six if Jalen didn't go down, because we were a good team when Jalen was there, and he was a big part of what we did. And so it was just one of those things where you're like, okay, he at least is going to get another year to kind of push it. And so when they made the decision, it was like, oh, okay. Like, I wasn't mad, but it was just like I just wasn't expecting it at all. Like, it's out of the blue. And you know what? And I learned this too. It's like, listen, if the Hawks are about to take another step and go into another direction, they are completely within their right to say, hey, I think we need another decision maker to help us do it. This happens sometimes. Sometimes there's teams where they're like, you're here to help us get through this point. And then we know when we get to this point, we will move on to take the next step. So I think that's something that I think we'll be monitoring with the Hawks. I mean, the names you heard Elton Brand, I'm not a fan of. I've heard Minnesota's GM potentially, because he has a potential opt-out this year after the season.
Yeah, Tim Connolly.
I don't know, because, I mean, he did trade Cat. Again, I know that's a lot of that's also CBA related, but
David Griffin's available.
I was just about to say David Griffin's available.
Maybe go from a GM becoming a bad boy. I mean, listen, you never know. That could be someone they talk to. And also, I think the big fish would be, Bob Myers. Right. I think he would be the big fish, but they're saying they don't know if Bob would want to move from the West Coast. First, does he want to be in Atlanta? Does he want to move from the West Coast? Because he loves it over there. He wants to be over there. So I think because there was like a report today that said like the owner's willing to pay top money for a lead veteran, proven decision maker to help build this young core. So I definitely think that they maybe were just like, we appreciate everything he's done. We know what he's done for the organization, but it's almost like, and maybe it could just be reactive, like, we got to win next year. We got to change who's leading those decisions, right? And see how that impacts things. But I, Hawks fans have been kind of in battle with him because they always felt like because he was a new GM, did he have the cachet? Did he have the relationships where, maybe because, somebody's well known, has good connections, like, I'm not going to ask for a first round pick. I'm going to let it be okay. Did he do enough for certain trades and things like that? And so, I don't know what's next for Landry. I hope, someone gives him another opportunity within someone's front office. Just, obviously you don't want to be the main decision maker. That's fine. But just let him, see what he can do in a lesser role and then go from there. So, and the fact that we promoted a guy who was on the team from Golden State. Before that, we had Travis Slink, who also had connections to Golden State. We hear about Bob Meyer. It sounds like they definitely look at the Golden State model and like that model over there. But like I said, I don't know if that's a direction we actually go in with our staff and taking that role. So, and it sounds like this is a plan from what I've heard. They have names, but there's nobody who is like, we know. Like, it seemed like you guys fired David Griffin and knew who you wanted. Y'all knew who y'all wanted to get there. This isn't the same situation. We're actually going to, over the coming days, kind of figure out more of what direction we're leading in.
Or you're actually going to interview candidates and do a job search? Or okay.
Wait, y'all don't like the instant hire? Y'all like
that's an interesting business model to go ahead and to interview a bunch of people for a position. That is interesting business model. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I saw some people actually when y'all hired him, y'all were like, I think what was the last job Dumar's at?
He's been in the NBA front office for the last couple of years, and before that, he was with the Kings as like a consultant. But before that, it was the Pistons.
I think didn't the Pistons not end good?
Yeah,
no, it wasn't great. No, it was not great.
So people were like, "Y'all breaking him in."
Yeah, it wasn't ideal. He built the 2.0 bad boy Pistons and then tore him down, and the Pistons ain't win a playoff. Didn't make the playoffs for like 20 years. However long it took for him to make the playoffs this year.
So, I think that obviously, like I said, you really don't know. Obviously, you always assume when these guys do other jobs and go through the league that they'll maybe grow or see something different, especially because the league has changed. Like, this isn't the same league he was when he was in that position before. Right. So you would assume he's able to adapt to what it is and the talent that you have. But, like I said, it's a decision they wanted to go with, and, we'll see. We also have some nepotism issues. Owner's son is involved in these decisions. Don't have any reason why he's involved in these decisions. He's like the governor, basketball person. I'm just like, bro, like,
yeah. There's a lot of titles people have in these front offices that you're like, you're what? You're what? Like, they hired Troy Weaver, and I'm like, wait, he's what? So like, what is Bryson Graham, and then what is Swin Cash doing? And it's like, okay, everybody just got titles. You just bring people in. And
something to make it sound good. Yeah. Gotta make it sound good. Make it sound good.
Titles.
So yeah, like that. That's kind of where I am with kind of that situation and seeing what happens. And it's just something I'll have to keep monitoring as the offseason goes on. As like I said, we have to make some crucial decisions moving forward. And, Trey's obviously, basically been like he's expecting to kind of be a postseason team next year. So, because I always told people, like, Trae Young was never, to me, a guy who was in danger of being traded or leaving the team this season or even this offseason. It was always next year. It was always going to be next year. Now, we'll see if Trae signs an extension or if he goes into the season and just plays it out. Or he could pull a Giannis and, let me see what you do first before I make any commitment. But, I think they know what the expectations are. They know what the goal is. I know Tony wants to win. I think Quinn's like, all right, let's take the next step and just kind of take that and going from there. Because, if not, Quinn is entering the full year as the Hawks head coach. So there's that expectation to win some games. I'm sure for some of y'all may also, like, with your head coaching situation, it's like, all right, well, let's see what happens. Let's see if we can get some health, get the guys going, and see if we can lead to some success. So I think that's where we are right now, I would say, right now in the organization.
Yep.
So
sounds familiar to the Pelicans. Very, very similar.
Yeah. I mean, wait, are you telling me you guys want to do Zion for Giannis?
I don't think Milwaukee's offering that. I don't think so.
Well, everybody keeps saying it because they're like, oh, they get swept by Indiana.
We'll see. Well, see, I would be trying to put Giannis and Zion together. So that would be me personally. Let's just play some. Let's play some Rock'em
Herb and Trey.
Rock'em Sock'em Robot basketball.
Nah, that's fair. That's fair. So you guys have a first round pick. Yeah, y'all have the first. Y'all might have first pick, second pick, third pick. So for you guys in that process, what exactly? Obviously, you know who the best players are in those spots. But is it for you guys like, please, Cooper Flag? Are you fine with an Ace Bailey or a Dylan Harper? Or like, what does that look like for you guys? Because obviously, you know, we got first pick last year. It wasn't the greatest selection, but we picked Zach. A lot of people are happy with Zach. You know what I'm saying? I think, you know, we think he has a very high ceiling. He's made improvements throughout the season. Obviously, you guys are in a different situation because you have guys who some people before the season, they said Cooper and Ace Bailey were both like generational prospects. I think some people have cooled on Ace a little bit, but like, what are you guys looking at from a draft pick perspective? Depending if it lands 1 through 3, is it just like literally where we pick, just take the best player, or is it like a certain person maybe that you're like, this guy would fit here pretty well?
Well, yeah. So I think again, the uniqueness of the Pelicans is once again showing here because I think obviously you want Cooper Flag. Cooper Flag fits. He fits into the Pelicans like starting lineup. He locks the Pelicans into like a lot of the Pelicans players would get locked into like roles that you like, okay, I know exactly what this person needs to do. I know what this person needs to do. But the Pelicans also have a lot of talented players. They have Zion, they have Trey Murphy, they have DeJounte Murray. As of right now, CJ McCollum is still on the team. Herb Jones is on the team. You have Jordan Hawkins, who is trying to figure some things out and get himself into it. And now you're bringing this guy in. And so if it's Cooper, obviously that brings your ceiling up to a level. But Dylan Harper would fit in well with this team. Ace Bailey would fit in well with this team. VJ Edgecombe would fit in well with this team. Any of those guys in that top 3, top 5, in everybody's mock, they all fit with the Pelicans. And the good thing about it is that they won't be needed to come in and save the franchise. They don't. If Cooper goes to Washington, if he's not LeBron, they will be back in the lottery the following year. Even if he is LeBron, they might still be in the lottery next year. Same thing, I think, is if he goes to like Utah. I think Utah, he has to go to Utah and he has to be great, or they'll be back into the lottery once again. Whereas I think if he goes to the Pelicans, he'll be behind Zion for sure. He'll be behind Trey Murphy for sure. He'll probably be behind DeJounte Murray for sure. CJ damn sure not gonna let no rookie outshoot him. So yeah, you have him. And so like that person doesn't need to come in and necessarily, save the franchise. That person can come in and contribute in ways that they are comfortable while also, potentially, if healthy, contributing to a team that has a lot of talent on it. So I like Coop. I think Coop obviously is the golden goose. But I really like my brother. We talk about Ace Bailey. I like his shooting and his ability to kind of put the ball on the ground and be a scorer. I like VJ Edgecomb's edge off the bench and scoring and getting in. I think he would probably come off the bench for the Pelicans as a smaller kind of guard. But any of those guys would fit the Pelicans. And the Pelicans are in a unique position where they are a high draft pick. They're picking high in the draft because of circumstances, not necessarily because of talent.
Right. I feel a little bit differently. So I look at the roster and I say, and I watch this whole season, even though, the season was damned since game 1. The Pelicans are just a super small roster. You mentioned like all the wings on the Pelicans. And at one point in time, me and my brother called the Pelicans Wingstop because there were so many guys 6'6" to 6'9" who could defend, who could shoot, who could do both sides of the ball. Now with Brandon Ingram no longer there and Larry Nance gone and Dyson Daniels in Atlanta, now like Jose Alvarado is a solid role player, but he's small. CJ McCollum's older and small. We just talked about DeJounte Murray. He's a long guard, but he's not very big and doesn't have a whole lot of size. Jordan Hawkins, again, a frailer type body. And so I look at the Pelicans roster and I say, if you're going to pick this high in the draft, obviously you have number 1, you pick Cooper Flag. But outside of that, like the Pelicans shouldn't necessarily be looking to add guards to this roster. Now, if you do your research and you do your homework on the player and you figure out that, hey, this is the best pick for the team, regardless. We'll figure it out how they're going to fit in the rosters. So be it. You pick the best player available. So be it. But if I'm looking at it, I'm looking at taller players on this roster. So a Cooper Flag, a Ace Bailey, a wing forward type player, because that's what this roster is really lacking. Even with all the players they have available, again, Herb Jones, slender guy. Trey Murphy's not the biggest guy. So if you can bring someone who has a frame that's going to be able to grow into and put weight into and be able to switch with some of these long wings that can dribble, score, defend, all things like that, and that's where the NBA is headed toward. That's what I think the Pelicans should be looking to aim, both in not only the draft but also in free agency.
Yeah, and I think, listen, obviously I know draft lottery would be a very important day for you guys, obviously locked into that. And listen, speaking from a team that had number one overall draft pick, especially because we weren't expected to, because we were supposed to be the 10th pick and got number one. Listen, that decision, man, you really gotta invest your resources. Obviously, in this draft, is number one will be Cooper, but if not, you really gotta, like 2, 3. I feel like you still gotta really invest into all the other prospects and really kind of evaluate. Okay, what do we? You always hear GMs say best player available, but at the same time, you also have to know, okay, what are we going to do to fix whatever hole that we think is most prevalent on this roster? You mentioned size. Obviously with us drafting Zach, he's 19. He's skinny. He wasn't eating he was eating French food. He wasn't eating American food. Okay. So obviously we know part of the growth is, him growing, getting more muscle, things of that nature, getting more confident in his game. And I've said that him playing actually in the French league, you notice the difference between that game and the American game, because a lot of guys, like I always say, Ricochet has a more mature game than a lot of 19-year-olds, because really good cutter, really good at putbacks. It's just, you can tell like it's different over there than like in American, where it's like it feels like you're just more up your athleticism. You're just the most athletic guy on the floor, and you just overwhelm everybody. And so it's a very important decision. But luckily for you guys, you're kind of in the same position as us. We weren't the worst team in the league, and we had the first pick. We have talent on the team. So now it's like, okay, we just need the best guy who's going to fit into what we're doing, and then that'll help elevate the team as you continue to move forward. But I think we can wrap it up here, guys. I appreciate you guys coming in, man, for another episode. Having a great discussion with you guys tonight, and just talk about all things Hawks, Pelicans. The two birds flock together, whatever you want to say. But hey, let them know where to find y'all.
Yeah, you can find us at on Twitter, on Instagram. That's NO_basketball, no E. You can follow myself on Twitter at Garrick_Rattler, and follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and out obviously wherever you get your social medias. And then the podcast is on any of your streaming platforms and on YouTube as well.
Yes, sir. And obviously, guys, y'all know where to find me, Bryce_2K. I believe the Hawks is available on any podcast platform available out there. If you want to listen to it at lunch, go to work, whatever you want to do, it's available. And obviously, if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave comments down below about anything we discussed. Obviously, go check those guys out over on their channel, on their socials for sure. Because in case there's ever something that interacts between us and the Pelicans, again, these are my go-to guys for all the insight on that. So, like I said, I appreciate y'all guys tuning in for another episode. The Rattler Bros. Bryce Lewis.
Yes, sir.